Hello, and welcome to the Enterprise Automation Excellence Podcast, hosted by Enterprise Management Associates. As a leading IT analyst firm, we provide deep insights across IT and data management technologies. In this podcast, we explore how automation drives business processes, analytics, development, and infrastructure. Join hosts Dan Twing and Tom O'Rourke as they discuss the evolving automation landscape, share strategies to optimize your tools, and guide strategic decisions for your automation portfolio. Now, let's dive into the world of automation excellence.
Hello, and welcome to the Enterprise Automation Excellence Podcast. I'm Dan Twing, and I'm here with my co-host, Tom O'Rourke. Today, we're diving into a topic that's critical for anyone in the automation space. What are your plans for 2025? It's that time of year when folks are thinking about what they're going to be doing next year. And even if you're in a company that doesn't follow a calendar year, you follow a fiscal year, it's still a natural time for reflection. So, Tom, what would you be thinking about if you're sitting in that seat?
You're right. This is the point of reflecting, of looking back at what's happened in the past year. For many people, this is also the point in the year where they're doing their own performance reviews. They're doing reviews for their team. Reflecting on that and looking forward, this is the time to say, what should your priorities be as you go into 2025? And as a leader, how can you better allocate the time for yourself and for your team in order to best serve your business?
So in that vein, maybe let's talk first about some business trends that are underway that would affect that, and then we can move into some of the technology trends as you look to apply that.
All right. So, I think the trends in many organizations are going to continue. They're going to, span going into the next year. There'll be the big initiatives that each organization is going to have for people who work in technology and operations. Is always going to be a drive for cost reduction. But there are also some of the trends that we've seen specifically around automation, the drive of businesses to digitize, to transform themselves, to modernize technology. And Dan, I know that's a hot topic for you. What do you think people should be looking at for 2025 there?
Well, certainly, depending on where an organization is in their digital transformation process, and I have asked this question for, I think, 3 years now in various surveys, and you can absolutely see progress there, but still the bulk of the market, 70%, is in process in various stages. And in the most recent survey I completed, now initially there was like 4% who said, no, we're not doing digital transformation. Everybody else was. Now it's like 1%. No, we're not doing it. And everybody else is. And certainly in this most recent survey, something like 26% would now classify themselves as mature, which is up 8 or 9% from when I first asked it a couple of years ago. So people are progressing through the process, but still the bulk of the market is right in the middle of it. We talked on a past episode about modernizing mainframes and other legacy infrastructure. That, for many, has become a roadblock where they've done their transformation as far as they can. They have to pause and deal with those issues, then they can carry on. So digital transformation is clearly a driver here, and all of what that might mean in terms of changing processes, retasking people, retraining staff, or even eliminating staff as certain older manual processes are displaced with different flows for how they interact with or service the customers, or however, whatever industry they're in, how they manage their business. Starting with where is your business in that process? And then what does that mean for you next year? You might be at a point where its digital transformation is held up and you're modernizing some legacy system. It may be that that's done for you and you're ready to move on with the next set of processes. And first you have to redesign the processes for the business, and then you have to think about where are we able to automate this so that redesigned process doesn't create a whole lot of other manual bottlenecks.
Right, that the automation team is going to be in the center of this, both with the processes as they exist right now and helping, as they make the shift into the new transformed processes along the way, maintaining a focus on the reliability and the resilience of the environment through all of this so that the customers of the organization don't even notice that there's something changed inside.
I'm not even sure I could flip a coin to decide whether this belongs on the business trends or the technology trends side of the equation here, but more push to the cloud, right? Whether it's buying things as SaaS apps or it's modernizing or creating new processes around their digital transformation, it's going way more the way of multi-cloud and hybrid cloud. On one level, that is a technical trend, but honestly, it's a pretty strategic business driver to consider where that key infrastructure is going to live.
For the business to focus on all the efforts on the things that they do that are unique and valuable to the customer, and acknowledging that it may make more sense to outsource the processes that are not as critical to them. That long trend along the way that it's rare to find an organization that does its own payroll rather than outsourcing that out.
Yes.
I think that was one of the first outsourced processes, and today you find that across marketing, you find that across sales. You may certainly still interested in managing your own sales team, but the infrastructure and the tools to do that getting harder and harder to justify that you provide unique value in doing it. I think the other business trend that we should note is that in many businesses, there continues to be an effort to expand the user base of automation, in particular to get the developers and the business teams that rely on automation to do a lot of the automation work themselves and rely on the central automation team for subject matter expertise, but not to do the actual task definitions or anything else.
Yeah. And when you do have more multi-cloud, it increases the workload in many cases. And if you don't think about automating that could be a problem. And so that's one place where you probably have, you're kind of flirting around the phrase citizen developer, right? And you do have at least more technical folks involved at one level, and they can consider what they need to automate off of their own task list. But when you spread that citizen developer concept farther away from the folks with technical skills, I mean, we've seen, for example, in IT operations, the emergence of almost developer skilled operations staff that tend to focus on these kinds of automations for that team. And we have seen, developer types within business units more and more, and less in a centralized matrix organization. But ultimately, the farther you get away from trained engineers defining their own automations, that comes with good and bad, right? I mean, the good is people know what they need and they can get it defined. The bad is they don't really have the training to think beyond, I want this to happen when I do this, right? The happy path, as I like to call it. They can define it, but they don't know how to plan for the exception handling that you also need around it. So, you still do need that sort of oversight and assistance.
Right. They may not be thinking about what happens when February has 29 days.
Yes.
Which is, in the blood of an automation specialist.
Right. Well, from there, the big business trend, whether it's cost cutting, whether it's digital transformation, whether it's just trying to empower more folks to automate their own roles. Let's shift to, what are the technology trends behind that? Of course, the biggest, loudest one right now is AI everywhere, right?
AI in its various flavors is the shiny new thing that almost every company is doing something with, whether we're talking about looking at how to integrate large language models in or continued use of machine learning or other elements. As automators, this is just the latest in the set of technologies that the automation team needs to go and learn about and work with the development teams, find the new processes that require automation, to figure out how to integrate with new tools, as well as for the automation team to look at what new capabilities are their own automation tools bringing that are AI powered in this.
That all starts with good data and good data handling, right? Do you have the right data to feed into these models to help train them? It's never been more true. I mean, IT has said this since the beginning, garbage in, garbage out. Well, there's no place that old saying is truer than with an AI trained model, right?
Right. I think data analytics is probably the next area for an automation leader to keep on their radar. That while it has been outshone to a degree by AI, the data analytics is more mature in many organizations, but that means that it's not exploratory. There are development teams who are using data analytics to build out new capabilities. And so similar to AI, the new processes to be automated, new tools to integrate. But at a fundamental level, it also means for automation that there's a lot more data that needs to be moved around. More data movement processes, more volume of data. That existence of these data analytic tools is leading to an increase in how much data is being collected and processed and moved around in order to drive better decisioning.
Absolutely. And one of the bigger places is in cybersecurity, right? There's a tremendous amount of data generating monitoring tools and using AI to analyze that, to raise its hand when it needs a closer human eye. There's a lot of opportunities in the cybersecurity space.
Right. And I think alongside that, there's the ongoing efforts to try to improve operational monitoring, in part for cybersecurity, in part just for running the organization more efficiently. So similarly, more data being moved around, more opportunities for the automation team to get involved, as well as for the automation team to look at how the data that they have can be fed into these central pools of data and be used to better manage operations, to better manage the business.
We talked a little bit about in our last episode how automation folks should be interacting with the security folks to make sure that the automations are secure. The reverse is also true, and it doesn't just land with cybersecurity. But if I'm sitting in that seat, I want to think, how can I be a good evangelist of automation? And for example, hey, security team, you helped me make sure my automations are secure. What automation things are missing that I can deliver to help you in your job? And you can carry that to any other team across the company.
Exactly. And to finish up the technology trends, mention cloud and SaaS, which have been around for a while, but the trend continues to increase where organizations are using cloud or they're using SaaS rather than their own in-house data centers, and the ongoing pressure for all parts of the organization to be more agile. Lastly, I'll note, I don't know if it's a technology trend or an anti-trend, but for an automation team, it's still hard to be able to retire the legacy hardware, the legacy processes along the way. And this does create a long tail of old technologies that the automation team still needs to be familiar with and still needs to be considered as part of their automation plan.
Right. While you're balancing all of that, it's easy to get focused on those things right in front of you. But as we think about what would someone be planning for in 2025, you need to know where your organization is heading, right? What are their priorities so that you're focused on the right things?
Yes. And this is a little bit of a soapbox for me. My experience has been in talking with automation teams that while many of them are familiar with their own organization's priorities, that's not 100%. And so, as a gentle reminder in this, is you're looking at what are you going to be doing in 2025. It's important to understand what's important to your organization. You can start with talking to your manager as well as their boss and their boss, listening to the town hall meetings that your organization has. If you work for a public company, taking a look at the quarterly reports that your company publishes. Look at your own organization's website. What does the company website say? How is it telling customers and investors where the company is going and how it's going to proceed? It is integral for any leader, not just an automation leader, to make sure that they are operating in line with what the business is trying to achieve. And rather than waiting for that to be fed for you, take the time and go out and find it and confirm it with your management so that you spend your time in 2025 focused on the things that are going to be most valuable.
The trend of Automation Center of Excellence, if it's working correctly, I would expect to see some sort of a linkage between senior management, those directives, and how that then sets the priorities for the Automation Center of Excellence. But I've also worked in big companies in my career, and those logical lines of communication don't always exist. And in some cases, you're out of phase. That by the time they are telling you what their goals for you and your organization are for the coming year can be after you've had to submit your plan for the next year too. So, making sure that if you're involved in an Automation Center of Excellence, or if one reports to you, make sure to get those conversations in the right order and make sure those lines of communication are open and flowing.
Yeah, we've both worked in large organizations. And I think those are, they're large organizations, even, some smaller ones are not always great at communicating this information. But this, while we're talking about this in the context of 2025, understanding where your organization is going is really an ongoing effort. You should be doing it continuously. Not looking at, I'm going to, reset to the organization's goals once a year, but on an ongoing basis. Your organization's strategy is probably evolving on a dynamic basis. And as leader of automation, which is responsible for making sure that everything flows smoothly, you really need to stay in check with that.
The ultimate goal then is how can you improve the services both for, your internal customers and ultimately the business?
Yes. And I think here there is an opportunity not just to look at this as, I'm going to do what they tell me to do, but rather to step up as a leader and figure out how to be proactive, to understand the capabilities of your team and the systems that you're using, and make sure that there is a focus on improving the things that are going to have the greatest impact. And as a couple of examples in this, obviously, you're an automation team. If there are opportunities to do automation that's going to improve the way that you deliver services, take away some of the grunt work from your team, that's a good place to invest. Are you monitoring the infrastructure that you run on? Do you understand whether there are improvements that you should be making, that you need to go and get the assistance of the organization to increase reliability or resilience? Do you know how much headroom you have if there's a workload spike? Are there things that you can do to reduce the time to fulfill a request from your customers?
Well, because it's really about how can you help the business be more agile, right? The automation needs to happen quickly.
Exactly.
so that it can benefit the business.
Yeah, as a leader, to step up into this, you best understand the state of automation in your organization. So you're best positioned to look at the areas that, improvement will have business impact and that you can move them forward. I'll note two others. First is your skill improvement of your staff and of yourself. Make sure that you spend time talking with your team members and communicating to them so that you can agree on ways that they can improve their skills, perhaps learn a new tool or perhaps learn some new techniques so that they grow and your team overall expands in its capacity. And then the last piece, and since half the world are extroverts and half are introverts, say this leads a little more to the introverts, but develop a communication plan for the automation group. As the leader, how are you going to make sure that your team understands both what's going on in automation and the forces in the business that are driving your decision making? Making sure your management and stakeholders understand what is going on, and making sure that your users and the citizen developers know what's happening. Before we sign off, I just want to finish by talking a little bit about prioritization. It is very, very easy when you work in a team with an operational focus like operations to feel like there isn't any time to be able to go and focus on these service improvement ideas and to convince yourself of that. But, in my own experience, and I've spent years with operational responsibilities, I think that is almost always a false thought that the time is there, even if it's simply that you personally can find a couple hours a week, or you can find a day's worth of time across your team each week in order to be able to go and invest in these service improvement ideas. Not all of these ideas are going to fit for every organization, but as you look at them, there's probably one that would have a significant business impact. And a year from now, when you're going and doing your self-review for 2025, it's going to be the item that you want to lead with, the thing that you are most proud about.
Yeah, it's always hard to pause in the middle of all of the things that are immediately due and immediately of concern. But when you do, they pay dividends. That carving out that little bit of time, 5-6 weeks, 5-6 months later, becomes very valuable.
Yes, exactly. On that note, I'd like to thank everybody who has joined us here today. If you have feedback on topic today, past episodes, or you have suggestions on where you'd like to see us go in future episodes, you can reach out to us via email, the EAE podcast at emausa.com. The podcast itself is available all the major podcast syndicators, Spotify, Apple, YouTube, and others. And Dan and I are active on LinkedIn. You can always reach out to us there. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Dan and Tom, for your insights on today's topic, and thanks to our listeners for joining the Enterprise Automation Excellence podcast. If you're a technology or operations leader looking to enhance your automation strategy, stay connected for more expert insights. Visit enterprisemanagement.com to learn how EMA can support your automation initiatives, and check out more episodes for in-depth discussions and industry trends.